So we're going to go through some of the questions that were asked. We're going to actually start that. So 7 steps to financial freedom. The first step is to escalate. So remember, the first X, money you work for. So the question is, what do I do? Where do I start? Well, the very first thing is you increase your ability to earn. What you have is your time and your energy and your knowledge and your experiences. You have different skills, different experiences, different relationships, different connections than I do, than the person next to you. So the first thing you do is you work on yourself. And you can do this without a lot of money. They're called books. Read. Read books on things that you're interested in. And you'll learn a lot out of books. And you can get books for free by going to the library. So this doesn't cost a lot of money. Take advantage of any opportunity at work to cross-train into something else. If your attitude at work is I'm going to put in my time and I'm going to get my paycheck and that's it, that may be the very first thing you need to change. You need to change the attitude and become a learner. What can I learn from anybody and everybody there? Even that sandpaper person. You can learn some things from difficult people. You can develop skills on how to deal with difficult people. Okay? In the meantime, put into place some of Dave Ramsey's principles. Start trying to put some money aside for an emergency fund. Whatever you can scrape together, put it aside and do it regularly. Because what tends to get people in trouble is the emergencies that they don't have any money for. If you have some money, then you have some ability to meet that need. So the more you learn, the more you earn. My son and I both have real estate licenses. But I spent a lot of years taking a lot of classes to earn some designations within that industry that make me a lot more valuable than him. I've got 2 older brothers that also have real estate licenses. But they got to the point where they stopped learning in certain areas. I went on and I learned more and I earned a designation. And so in some respects, in some areas of the industry, I'm more valuable than they are. Just because of what I know. So the more you learn, the more you earn. In what areas of your business or potential business or your life, your industry, the things that interest you, do you need to increase your knowledge? If you're here and your heart is for third world nations and and ministering to those people, there's more to it than just learning the word. You need to learn about those people. You need to learn about what their true needs are. Yes, they need the Lord, and they need salvation, and they need deliverance. But when you step foot in that country, the first thing they may need is food and shelter. How can you help with that? You need to understand that. You may need to learn how to speak their language just so you can communicate. So anything that you have in your heart, you can spend time learning today that will make you more valuable as you move out of here. Even as a missionary, where you're not going to earn money from what you know, you may be more valuable because you can affect more lives because of what you know. And if that happens, all of a sudden you attract more money from donors who have a heart for that part of the world. So you've proven out the principle, the more you learn, the more you earn. It just may look different. Step 2, eliminate. These are not rocket science. You hear them over and over because they're principles that work. Eliminate your consumer debt. I said consumer debt. I got a friend of mine who he's been out of debt for years. And his aspirations are to be a real estate investor. And he owns multiple properties, but he's frustrated because it's growing slowly, very slowly. And one of the reasons is they have an aversion to debt. But what they don't realize is that they could leverage the money that they have, and instead of buying one house with $200,000, they could buy 2 houses with a little bit of debt. And that would multiply what they do. I'm not saying that debt is always good. I'm just saying that you focus first on the consumer debt. Those things, it's like my 90-year-old investor. He had no problem sending me $200,000 to invest in the property because he knew that that $200,000 was going to go to work for him and earn him more money over the life of that asset. Whereas the $200 he saw as being consumed. It would never come back to him. So when you sit down and look at your financial situation, first look for those things that are being consumed. They will never come back to you. We're taught in America how to be consumers. How we spend our money truly reflects what matters to us. There's a saying that if I look at your checkbook, or nowadays your bank account, because people don't have checkbooks, and see where your money's going, where you're spending your money, I can get a very good indication of where your heart is, right? I can also tell whether you're operating out of wisdom or out of emotion. I may be able to look at your bank account or whatever, and you give like nobody's business. I mean, every other transaction is you're giving somewhere. But you're not paying your bills. You're not being a good steward. You're spending somebody else's money. You're not operating in wisdom. So consume means to destroy. Destroy what? It destroys your power to get wealth. You may have a desire for wealth creation. God has given you that power, but you may have used that power to consume it on yourself. And you've destroyed that power to get wealth. So take a minute and list all the consumer debt you have at the moment. You need more paper? We'll get it for you. How many items on that list are credit cards? It's easy to get credit cards. Very easy. How much are you paying in credit card interest? So that interest is taking money away from you that you could be using to build wealth. Just think about the credit card bill and the interest that you paid last month. Take that same amount of money and invest in something that generated income. So go back to the XXX. Right here, we're talking about eliminating. That's that step 2. And at some point, you've eliminated enough of your debt to where your income that you currently have is enough to pay your bills, and then it gives you, you notice right here, the income's going up. That's because you're escalating your ability to earn. So you're doing both of those at the same time. You learn a little bit more. You can take a different position, a different job, earn a little bit extra. And so if you're doing both of those at the same time, you're going to get to that first X much quicker. Do these first 2 steps cause you to build wealth? No. But what they do is they put you in the position to build wealth. Because remember, you eliminate all your debt today, are you wealthy? No, you still have to get up and go to work tomorrow to earn income, pay your bills, to feed yourself, to get back and forth. But now you should have some extra that you can use to begin to build wealth by building assets. So what would change for you if you were debt-free from consumer debt? And I say consumer debt, don't throw your house in there at the moment. Would you throw your car in there as consumer debt? Probably. Unless you're a very astute investor and you're buying collector's cars that are now going up in value, all those cars that me and my friends ran around in the 70s and 80s that are now worth $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. But if you were free of consumer debt, what would change for you? What step, one step, can you take this week to begin to eliminate that consumer debt? Listen to the Spirit right now. Drop something in your heart. One step. Step 3, accumulate. Now we're going to start on the second X. So by reducing your debt and increasing your ability to earn, you've given yourself a little extra that you can begin to accumulate. That's not necessarily accumulate cash. It's accumulate assets. Although at some point you may need to accumulate cash before you can purchase an asset, right? So, here's a little trick. Learn to live on 80% of your income. And that's your after-tax income. That's your take-home pay. So what are you going to do with the other 20%? You're going to tithe, and then the other 10% is going to investments. So right now, quickly, what's 80% of your income? You just write it down. So you're going to start with 10% going to tithe, but that other 10%, instead of going to investments, you really do need to build up that emergency savings. This is typical, classic Dave Ramsey. Get that $1,000 emergency fund set aside. So how much is that 10%? Next, still got 10% going to tithe. Once you get that saving, the emergency fund, then you ought to save it for a home. Because you are going to pay for housing. Whether you're renting or buying, you're going to pay for housing. And so there are, yes, in different markets, sometimes it could be more advantageous to rent than to buy. But typically, over the long term, it's more advantageous to buy than it is to rent. Because at some point, you could potentially pay that house off. The other thing is, as you're paying the mortgage monthly, which is going to be about the same as rent, the balance that you owe on that house is going down. So you're building equity. We moved here in 2011. We rented for 2 years because that's all we thought we were going to be here was 2 years. And then we stayed for a third-year program. And then by that time, of the 3 kids I had in my house, I had one that had his senior year of high school left. And so we decided we weren't going to leave. And so we ended up buying the house at the end of our second year of school. And we've stayed there ever since. And that house, because of the market here, has grown in value tremendously. That doesn't always happen, but it tends to happen. But if I was still renting that house, I would not benefit from that. The people who own the house would have benefited from that. But because I own the house, I benefit from it. So can you live on 80% of your income? If not, what changes can be made? Is it currently feasible to put 10% towards an emergency fund? Was there a time that you used an emergency fund? What happened? I'm sure all of us have had need of funds in an emergency throughout our life up to this point, at some point. So you're going to need it, so you might as well try to start putting it away. Remember, you're positioning yourself to build wealth. It doesn't build wealth, but it positions you to build wealth. This is First X, this is typical Dave Ramsey. The next step is participate. You've positioned yourself to build wealth, but now you got to participate. But what tends to happen in the United States is the more you earn, the more you spend. Sometimes that's just life. I read a book called The Next Great Bubble Boom or something like that by Harry S. Dent. He's a demographer. And he went through the spending cycle of a lifetime. You get out of high school, you move out of mom and dad's house, you get a job, you rent an apartment. You spend a little bit of money, buy an old used couch, old worn out TV. So you spend a little bit, right? Then you get a little bit of an education, you get a better job, get a better apartment, maybe you buy a car, you buy a better couch, a better TV, so you're spending some. Then you meet that significant other, y'all get married, now you got two incomes, you get into a better apartment, maybe start buying a starter home. Now you put real furnishings in there, right? A real bed, and a real couch, and a real dining room table. And you start building. So you're spending money. Spending a lot more money than you were when you first got out of mom and dad's house. Then you start having kids. Then you have no control over your money. Right? Diapers, food, clothes. They never stay the same size. You know? And so you're spending. So he goes through this, and he said in your late 40s, early 50s, you tend to spend the most money you'll ever spend. And I was right there when I was reading this, and I'm going, yep. I got 5 kids. They're all eating. They're all needing clothes. They're all, I need a house big enough for all of them and their friends, and I'm just spending money hand over fist. And I'm still at the tail end of that stage because I got 2 in college and 1 in high school. And so some things you're just going to have to continue to spend money on. So my ability to earn now is so much greater than it was when I was just out of college and on my own, but I haven't really been able to totally benefit from it because of life. So that's going to happen. But if I would have taken, and I did, taken a portion of that and began to participate in it, which I did, the first thing I did was I bought a house. Every house that I bought when we were young was houses that needed work. So we went in there and we fixed them the way we liked them because we needed more house than we could afford because of the kids that we had. But it always helped. It worked. I'd put some sweat equity into it, and then by the time we were growing out of that house, I had some equity that I could put into the next one, and I did the same thing. So I was able to get a bigger house, a little bit bigger house, a little bit bigger house, incrementally. But I never really made a lot of money on those houses until the one I'm in today, just because of the market. But I was participating. Opening a Roth IRA or some type of retirement account. For you young people, a Roth IRA, you put money in after tax, you pay taxes on it, you put it in, it grows, but when you take it out, it's tax-free. So it's to your advantage to put money in now while your tax rates are low for you generally, and let it build and grow, and then take it out tax-free when you don't know what the tax rates are going to be. But if you just have a general retirement account, that's still good. It's participating. It's starting to build assets. Owning an asset and managing it closely will really grow you before you move to grow your second X. So by owning a house, you understand what it takes to preserve your asset. That house needs repairs. It needs to be painted. I had a family of squirrels take up residence in my eaves several years ago and just totally tore up that eave. I mean, it was horrible, doing a lot of damage to the house. So I had to get rid of the squirrels to preserve the asset. I won't tell you how I got rid of them, but it was fun. So, but if I was just renting the house, I wouldn't have known what to go through. They weren't bothering me too much. I could have lived with them there, but the house would have deteriorated faster. So just by owning it, I started to learn responsibility and stewardship. So it grows me, gets me in the position. How many of you have heard of Dan Dyer? One or two of you. So Dan, he's a pastor, but he has a real estate company, and what they do is they buy homes at tax sales and other foreclosures and things, fixes them up, and then he puts families in them. But he doesn't just rent them. He wants to take a family and put them into a house and make them owners. Because owners make better renters than renters do, because renters don't care. But he finds families that just, they want to own a house, but they just can't afford it. They can't get financing. He puts them into the house, charges them above market rent, makes them responsible for all the repairs and maintenance for 2 years. But at the end of 2 years, if they've kept up their end of the bargain, he sells them the house at a predetermined price, applies all of their rent for the last 2 years to their down payment, so now they can go get financing. So that puts them in the mentality of, I'm going to own this house in 2 years, so I better take care of it. There's a different mentality as an owner than there is as a renter or a consumer. So that's why you need to get out and start participating. So that's where you can start building that second X. Yes, your own home doesn't necessarily give you that passive income, but it grows you to the ability to where you can start dealing with that. Now you can start buying some type of income producing asset and understand how to preserve that and build it. So you have to start to build some type of asset base. How can you begin to build the green line, which is that second X? How can you build it? Again, right now, it's getting easier to start that. The Airbnb, Turo, starting a business of buying and selling on eBay, Craigslist. There's so many different opportunities that you have that we didn't when I was growing up. You know? I did a paper route. That was more labor than it was anything else. And then you always have the lemonade stands. Lemonade stands aren't very profitable in the country where nobody drives by your house, right? But we did what we could. So here's the story of two people. Both of them are earning $54,000 a year. Both of them have lived in their same house for 5.5 years. Person number one pays off all their debts, including their mortgage, cars, and credit cards in 6 years. Dave Ramsey talks about being able to do that. Person number two just continues creating and paying on debt. So now person one takes the money that he was using to pay all those debts, $2,500 a month, and he invests it. Simple investment. Person two just continues paying the mortgage over the decades. 24.5 years later, person one owns his house with no debt and has approximately $2 million in the bank if he's earned the average of 7%, which is a reasonable average over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Person two, 24.5 years later, still owns his home, still has a car, still has credit cards, still has debts, and practically nothing else. They were in the same position, but they spent their money differently. Person 2 is the consumer. Person 1 is the owner, and he's participated. Where are you? Where do you want to be? There's a lot of younger people here in the crowd. If you can get hold of these principles and concepts as you move forward, you will be far ahead of those of us who have a little more seasoning. You know? So step 5, accelerate. There are 3 primary ways to accelerate. You invest in real estate, the stock market, or your own business. 3 primary ways. You can become extremely wealthy in any one of the 3 ways. Most people who have higher levels of wealth have invested in real estate, and that's Billy's favorite. There are reasons for that. It's a hard asset. You can control it. There's things you can do to increase the value. You get to manage it. You make decisions on how it operates, things like that. Second is to invest in the stock market. That's Billy's least favorite, because he lost a lot of money investing in stock before he had any wisdom, knowledge, or understanding in the right areas. Not saying you can't make money there, and that may be something you understand. That's good. Billy didn't like it. Now he understands more, but back when he was building his wealth, he could understand real estate. He could understand a house, tenants, and value. He couldn't understand the stock market as much. The third is investing in your own business. When properly built, a business will actually replace your income from the first X. Remember, if you're self-employed, if you don't go to work tomorrow and you don't get paid, you don't own a business, you own a job. I owned a job in real estate. I was a real estate appraiser. I made good money. But if I didn't do an appraisal, if I didn't finish one, I didn't get paid. Then I also managed property. If I didn't go to work and didn't manage that property, I didn't get paid. Then I sold my appraisal practice to my partners, bought some more management, and I moved up here to go to school. That changed my business because I could no longer be there to do what needed to be done on a day-to-day basis. I couldn't go collect money from the tenants. I couldn't go look at the roof leak that was happening at the property. I couldn't go meet the fire alarm company because the fire alarm's been going off for 12 hours. I couldn't do that. I had to hire somebody to do that. So I started building a business that actually was running without me. I still was involved and I still had lots to do, but I started seeing the real glimpse of what's that difference between owning the job and owning a business. So if you can leave your business and it at least maintain the level of income or increase, then you do own a business. You don't own a job. We read a book and teach out of a book called The E-Myth in business school. And it says you're one of 3 types of people. You're either a technician, you're the one that does the work, and you're very good at it. You're a manager. That means you can manage people to get that work done. You can manage a business to make a profit. to pay its bills, or you're an entrepreneur. You're the visionary. You're the one that has the idea on how to grow that business. Most self-employed people are technicians that own their own business. They're very good at what they do, and they figured, let me do it for myself rather than for somebody else. But they never spend time working on their business. In other words, trying to figure out how that business can grow, make money, operate without them. Managers don't own businesses, they work for businesses, typically. They're going to manage for somebody else. And they're happy doing it. They love it. Good managers can make good money, but they still have to work to do it. The entrepreneur is the visionary. Problem with some entrepreneurs, we had a couple who come through business school, one specific gentleman a couple of years ago. He was a visionary, but he could never get anything done. He's too busy having visions. He needed to learn how to bring in the technician and the manager and put a team together to build his vision. So the idea is to position yourself to start participating in investing and moving forward and building your wealth. Remember, what you're looking for is where can I invest once and get paid multiple times. That may be different for you than it is for me, than it is for the person next to you. I had a young man come up to me, he's in car sales. I don't do car sales. Now I know a thing or two about cars because I grew up drag racing with a guy who owned an automotive shop. So I know some things about cars, but I don't know, nowadays I don't know as much as I used to. So I can't spot a good deal on a car. He can, because that's what he does. So he should build that knowledge, leverage that knowledge to somehow get to the point where he can make money off of that without having to be there to sell. I don't know how he would do that, because again, I'm not in that industry. What do you have a passion for, a knowledge for, that you can leverage in buying and selling, consulting, teaching, training? You know, one of the things that I'm getting into, so I came out of the real estate business, actually I'm still in it, but I came here to Charis, got hired in 2015 to be the business school coordinator, which is a very administrative job, which I'm not a good administrator. I could do it, but it just sucks the life out of me. I didn't realize that when I took the job. But I've moved out of a lot of the administration and I started teaching more and more and more and found out I like teaching. And I like to think I'm pretty good at it in some respects. I'm really good at it when it comes to real estate, because that's my passion, that's my experience, that's my skill sets. So I'm really good at it, and I like to say that I can take the complex and make it simple. And so I've been developing that in commercial real estate. If any of you want to get into investing in real estate and you Google investment classes, investment courses, 99% of those are going to be residential. They may not say residential, but that's what they're going to be. How to buy a house, flip a house, rent a house, all of that. Very, very few. In fact, I think I can name 2 or 3 that I've uncovered focus on commercial because it's complex. Well, I'm taking that and making it simple. So this weekend, I'm speaking at Billy Epperhart's real estate workshop in commercial. Billy made his millions in residential. He's had these real estate workshops for several years. However, and he's done real estate, his group has done residential real estate coaching now for about 3 years. However, there's a group of people in his workshops that need to go to the next level. They don't have the time and energy to buy hundreds of residential properties. They need to buy 1, 2, or 3 commercial properties to generate the same kind of income. So I'm learning how to do that. I put together my first course, sold a couple of them at his Wealth Builders. We are getting ready to offer coaching, commercial coaching. I'm going to take a teaching, I'm going to be able to package it, and then that teaching now can be sold over and over and over and over and over again. You may have some skills like that. You can take that, create a book, create a workbook, create a video course. That's what YouTube does, right? A lot of people are making money on YouTube. Some of them making stupid videos. Almost seems like the people making the stupid videos are making more money than the other people, but because they've learned how to monetize what they have. You have skills, you have resources, you have time, energy, experience, connections. What do you have? My oldest son is in the music industry. He has a band, and they're out in Nashville, and they changed the name of their band a couple of years ago. But they had registered a few of their songs under their previous band's name, and it was still making them. They registered it at some company, I forget. But like if you're going to go out and make a video and you need songs that are copyrighted, that you have legal rights to, you go to this service, you pay, and you can use their song. Well, they're still making a couple of $100s a month off of these songs that they had registered 5 years ago. They hadn't added anything to them. But yet they're in the studio every week creating new songs. Not all of them work for the new genre that they're in for their new band. So Lightbulb came on to them about a month or two ago and said, hey, let's take all these songs that we've created and let's put them under this label over here. And if they make money, great. If they don't, that's okay. And so they're going to put it under there so that they can monetize it. There's a lot of bands out there that don't think that way. They were thinking that way. You've got skills. You've got things that you could monetize. At some level, what is that? So you want to invest once and get paid multiple times. So emancipate. All that means is freedom, right? You get to the point where whatever you're doing, whether it's my real estate course, books, my son's music, the rent house, all the Turo cars, the Airbnb rooms, whatever it is, at some point, if you keep participating and accelerating, you're going to get to the point where you reach freedom, where you can live off your assets. You're not living off of your time that you've put in to a job and get paid wages. You're living off of that one investment you made in that rent house 5 years ago. My friend that I told you he paid off his houses and stuff, he actually came out to school and they lived off of the rent, off of the one house that they had back home that was paid for. So he was at a level of financial freedom. He was having a hard time going farther. So that's where you want to get to, that financial freedom, where your passive income. Remember, if I don't get up today and I don't do anything, my income is still coming in. That's passive income. Where your passive income exceeds whatever your expenses are. That's why you can start the second level before you pay off all of your first level. Because if you can create enough passive income to exceed whatever your expense level is now with all your debt and everything, then you can get out of the rat race, and then you have extra money to pay down all of those debts, and that's why that expense number goes down. Then you get to step 7, donate. Donate means give and invest 100% of your excess money to kingdom purposes and social causes. Notice, give and invest. Why is invest important? Because it grows. And it may not be invest for growth's sake. Maybe it's just that it replenishes. So now I invest money into microfinance in a third world country. If through the return and the interest, so let's say it's $10,000 and I invest it there. If I have a system in place where that $10,000 gets lent to a group of people, they pay it back with some interest, that $10,000 is now available to lend out again to another group, and another group, and another group. And so that $10,000 gets used over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's investing. Whereas if I give and it gets consumed with the rice, it's gone. I did it once, it's gone. So that's what the investment means. The investment means that you put it somewhere where it's going to at least sustain itself and self-perpetuate. If it grows, even better. So the goal of the third X is making sense of making money for making a difference. That's where the triple X comes in. That's what people aren't really being taught. They're being taught the value and the virtue of getting out of debt, paying their bills. They're being taught the value and the virtue of getting out of the rat race to give them freedom. But a lot of them get stuck at that point because then it's just about me. One of my brothers, my brothers have done very well. Even though I have more knowledge than them in some areas, they've taken more risk and done more things and made more money than I have in a lot of areas. And at one point in time, they had come off a big deal where they had a lot of money. And I heard my brother say that he did not want to leave his kids, he has 5 kids like I do, that he did not want to leave his kids a lot of money because of what wealth can do to families. They start fighting over it. It causes them to make bad decisions and whatever. You can see with the wrong motives, the wealth can destroy people, right? And my heart was grieved because I'm thinking, no, if you teach them the godly principles, the purpose of wealth, and why and how, then you have launched them to go farther and faster than you've ever done. That's what I want to do with my kids. I'm getting a little bit of a late start, but that's what I want to do. And I hope that's what my kids do with the leg up that they have, is that they take the principles and they take the understanding of the purpose of wealth and they can go beyond, right? So, the reason we're teaching this class is because we want to give you the understanding of what is the purpose of wealth. To help you to understand it's a virtue to desire wealth. God gave us the power to get wealth. He wants us to have barns so that we have resources, so that we can direct them. But we got to understand, what is that purpose? And how can we partner with God in accomplishing that purpose.